Hello and welcome everybody, it's Karen. Thanks for joining me once again. Today I've got this little Christmas card. It's a bendy card and I've made a few of these before. But this one has a little snowman in the ornament that wiggles around because there's a penny in behind him to give him some weight. But the card will actually fold really flat, as you can see here. And yet when you open it up, you can bend it open and it's got quite a bit of dimension. I've added a few little die cut elements on the back there, and there's lots of room to write a message. So I've been using these Enchanting Christmas embossed die cuts from Paper Rose Studio. These are beautiful. So I'm just trying to show you here. You can see that they are not embossed over the whole entire image, although I guess that one looks like it. But you can see here, this one, it's just the ornaments and the flowers that are embossed, and they are all this really pretty blues and purpley colors. So for this card, I started with a 6x6 inch piece of sort of a lilac or lavender colored cardstock. And I'm going to do some ink smushing, so I'm putting some Catherine Pooler inks down. I will list everything down below, guys. I like to have a bit more control over my ink smushing, so I tend to put the ink onto the scrap packaging there, as you can see, and then I mist that, and then I can see where the ink is going and try to spread it out where I want it to go rather than turning the cardstock face down into the ink. So that's all I'm doing. I did quite a few layers of this ink smushing, drawing it in between. And then I went over with one of those inks because I wanted to fill in the gaps, basically. Now, I've got my stencil on there and I'm using this grit paste from Distress. It's in Snowfall. So it does have a little bit of glitter to it, but it doesn't have as much glitter as I wanted. So I went in after, while that was still wet, and just sprinkled on some of this Diamond Frost glitter from Cosmic Shimmer. And I'm just sprinkling that over the whole thing. It did go where the grit paste wasn't, so it was on the more wet background, but I brushed that off afterwards with a little brush. So I think you can see it there a little bit better. And then I trimmed that piece of cardstock down to be 5.5 inches wide by 6 inches tall. Now it's quite a mess on the back, so I glued it to another piece of white cardstock that was the same size and let that set up for a little bit. Now it needs to be scored right down the center on the 5.5 inch wide side. So right at 2 3/4 inches, I just did one score line straight up and down, which was a little tricky over that grit paste, I have to admit. But it seemed to work. Now you want to bend it, not fold it. So that's all I'm doing here. I'm just trying to get that bend in it so when it goes to stand up, it will have that. So kind of like that. Now for the snowflake border, I have a 2.5 inch wide piece of scrap cardstock. Now really, I should have just cut this down to be 6 inches wide, but I think I was just being lazy. So I'm just centering this die in between the lines there. And then because it was too wide, I just cut straight up to where the end of the score line is there. Now you want to score 1/4 inch in on both the top and the bottom of that border at both ends of that, the left and the right ends. So I'm just scoring it there, following that score line down, and then you're going to fold the tabs under and burnish them. And I did that with both ends of this. Now you can see here, you want that border to have that slight bowed shape. And so to do that, you use your bone folder to sort of curve that paper, just the same as you would when you're trying to curl ribbon. Same idea, you're sort of dragging your bone folder along the back of it. But I was worried that I would catch those snowflakes, so I just put it on a piece of copy paper, and then I ran my bone folder behind, and it did work quite well. I was just trying to be a little careful on the front that I wasn't catching the edges of that snowflake, or any of the snowflakes really. So you can see there it's got the curved shape. It's not perfect, but it's enough for this card. So I'm using that glue that I had used earlier. I will list this below. It's a really nice strong glue, and it dries very clear. It is clear to start with, and it dries clear. But here I've got the left tabs glued up. I didn't bother with the right at this point, and I'm just attaching it right along the bottom, trying to keep it along the bottom. And then because it is curved, it was a little bit of an issue there to make sure I got it in the right spot, but it seemed to be okay. And then because this glue is liquid and it wasn't, a double-sided tape that I was using, I could wiggle it down to make sure I got both ends nice and straight. So I just let that set up. Now, while that was setting up, I went to work on the ornament, and now this is a new die from Paper Rose Studio. It's the Layering Ornate Bauble 1 die. So from the outer layer, I've cut the backing, which is out of silver cardstock, and I also used a scrap of cardstock to just cut that topper piece. And then there's a little line on this where the die was. You can see it quite easily in real life. I don't know that you can see it terribly well there, but I just used that as a guide and just cut that out. Now, to get the front outer ring only, I am taping together these two die pieces. So it will give me that piece right there, which is what I want to go on the front. And I'm just using a little bit of glue so I can attach that silver topper that I had previously cut out. And now that inside piece is really pretty, guys. Really pretty. So if you didn't want to do everything I'm doing here, you could just put this ornament on this card, I think, and be done, and it would be beautiful. But of course, I had to make my life a little harder, so I'm taping this front ornament now to a piece of acetate, and I'm just going to fussy cut it out. So I'm going right around that outer ring, and when I get to where the tape is at the widest point, I veered off 90 degrees away to cut a tab. I didn't measure the length of this tab or anything. So long as it fits in behind that silver piece, I was okay with that. So I'm just going around the bottom of it until I get back around to the other side at the widest point where the tape is, and then straight up again and out a little ways just to have something to attach to the bottom, and then back in again. And so really the tape where I had put it was a pretty good guide for where to cut. And then I didn't bother cutting out the topper piece because I didn't want that to be in acetate. And I just used that same glue to glue it back down now onto that acetate. So once that had set up and dried, I put it on an old computer mouse pad because I wanted to score those tabs so they would fold under a little more easily. And I'm just using a ball stylus and going around the white outer ring there. And then when I went to fold this under, I tried to make sure that the center part was folded under the white ring. And it's still, it works quite well, but there is that little piece on the corners that was, sticking out. So I just took my scissors and cut that off on both sides. So long as you've got that middle section still attached, you're okay to cut those edges off. So you can see here the middle is only attached in a little bit, but it works. And once again, you need to shape this to fit around that bendy part of the card. So the same thing with the copy paper, and there it is with a bit of a fold to it. Now on the back, on the inside of this, I'm putting some more of that glue down. You could use glossy accents, I think, or any white glue would probably work. And I'm putting some Distress mica flakes onto this just to give it that sort of frosty look. So I'm just sprinkling those on, and then I just took my finger and tapped them down to make sure they stuck down. And then I just tapped off the excess there and let that set up and dry. So there you go, there's that frosty look that it has. Now, on the snowflake, this is one of the die cuts, or the snowman, I guess. You could put a hole in his head and just have him hanging with the filament thread and a penny behind, but I didn't want to stick a hole in his head. So I have got some red line tape that I've put on my penny, and I've just cut 2 scraps of cardstock that are the same size, and I'm attaching the penny to one of those. And then I put a little more red line tape on the back of the penny, and then attached, oh, I did burnish that first to make sure it stuck down, and then removed the backing, and I just attached the second scrap piece. Now on my first card, I did not attach the second scrap piece, but for this one I was trying to cover up the penny. So I've got a nylon filament thread there. It's non-elastic, and I've just threaded it 2 little holes I had up at the top, and I just tied that off in a double square knot. And then I've put some glue on the front of that cardstock, and I'm just attaching the snowman so he's pointing straight up and down. And then I threaded him through. So with one thread I came from the back to the front and threaded back to the back again, just like you saw there. And then I did the same with the other thread on the other side, just from the back and again through to the front and to the back. And then when I had it there, I was just checking to make sure that my snowman was at the right height now where I wanted him to go, that he wasn't too high or too low. I wanted him sort of in the middle. And so once I had him where I wanted him, I tied that off in a double square knot again at the back and just cut that off. Now this silver ornament needs to be scored right down the middle. So I am lining that up at the 5-inch mark, and I'm trying to keep the middle part of the topper straight down from that, so that I could just score straight up and down. And again, you want to bend it but not fold it. So you just want to get that curve to it. And then we're going to attach the front piece to the back. So I used a little bit of low-tack tape at the top and the bottom of this ornament once I had them in place. And then on the back, I used that same glue, but you could use the red line tape. That would work really well to attach the acetate to the back. So, and you could even use glue, just let it set up in time. So I set it aside under blocks, and now you can see that little snowman wiggles inside the ornament. So I'm using that same glue again now all over the back, silver back piece, and I'm going to just line this right up with that center line on my card base. So that silver piece underneath has a crease in it, and I'm lining that up with the crease on the card base. And just pressing that down. And I let that set up under blocks too. I just saw that grit paste underneath it. I think it just needed some time to really, let the glue dry and make sure it was stuck down. So there it is. You can see that he wiggles quite nicely in there, and I really like that about it. Now I put a little bit of silver wire on the top and just trimmed it down. This will extend past, so in an envelope this will have to be, folded under. But I've got the new Mary Duo Layer die here, and I've die cut the white part, I think 3 times from white cardstock and the outline from silver cardstock, and I just attached that to that border. Now the one on the right is the one I've just done, and I did add in those silver pearls. I actually went back and added them to the first one. And I've put some more die cut pieces on the back. There's so much room to write a message on these. And they're fun. That ornament swinging is really fun. They stand up, they've got lots of dimension. So I just thought those were kind of a fun way to use those die cuts. I just want to say thank you so very much, everybody, for coming and watching this video. I really hope I've given you a little inspiration today, and I hope you'll come back for the next video. Have a great day, everyone.